Me too. I'm not sure I'm going to make it. We'll see. Okay, cell phones. You got your cell phones off? Good. Is this on? Good. How are we doing, AV? Does this look okay? I can't see you, so it must be. Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. I'm Stephen Yenser from the UCLA English Department, which is one of the sponsors of the series, which originated 50 years ago, more or less. We're going to call next year 50 years at the Sunset Canyon Recreation Center, and they continue to be made possible by the sponsorship of the English Department and the Office of Cultural and Recreational Affairs at UCLA. And obviously the sine qua non is public programming here at this great museum, and the programs operate under Claudia Bester, as most of you know, I hope. I'm delighted to have David Lehman back after some years. There he is, yeah. We owe his return in part to the opportunity it afforded him to attend some Dodger games. David, a New Yorker, has been a dedicated Dodgers fan all his life. Even though the team left its original Brooklyn home when David was 9 years old. I say he's a fan. Really, he's an expert, as he is an expert on a dazzling variety of subjects. I think of him as a kind of Odysseus among contemporary people of letters in this country. He is polytropos, as they say, is polymechanos, a man of many guises, that is, and devices, like Odysseus. Many too many for me to encapsulate tonight, though I will mention his authorship of a book called The Perfect Murder, which is a study of mystery stories that takes in the Oedipus myth, and it comes all the way up to, I guess, Ross MacDonald, and I'm not sure who else more nearer us. But this is a fascinating book. David writes many books that are very good, as you know. And then there's his own detective work focused on a suspect literary theory entitled Signs of the Times, Destruction and the Fall of Paul de Man. The Fall of Paul de Man. You get it? Fall, yeah, of course you do. This is a poetry reading. More recently, there are books on Frank Sinatra and the New York School of Poets, of which David is now the preeminent representative. Notwithstanding the demands that such things make, Odysseus Lehman has kept his dauntless craft sailing along to and from his home, which is, by the way, in Ithaca, New York, but still it's Ithaca. And by craft, of course, I mean poetry. Playlist, from which he'll read tonight, is a delectably addictive journal of the musings provoked by the sirens encountered on his radio for 56 straight days. The music he hears and alludes to is chiefly American popular song and jazz from the 1930s through, I'd say, the 1960s, basically, though classic music figures too. And the music he makes deftly splices in contemporaneous elements from those years, JFK's assassination, the 1975 World Series, in which the Dodgers did not participate, the assorted blondes in Hitchcock's films put in appearances, along with invaluable but obscure facts and heuristic theories. Most of the songs in David's poems are inevitably love songs, quotes from which he cannily excerpts, dusts, burnishes, and sets, so that the wisdom in them outshines the banality. One of the medleys he composes, or conducts, as he says, is subtitled Mahler's Third. A tour de force, it brings together the sixth movement of that symphony, a roundelay from Nietzsche's Zarathustra, and a 1938 song by Sammy Fain and Irving Kahal. I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places. You'll remember it begins, I hope some of you know, and ends, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you. Seeing things again and anew are motifs in this book, and I take I'll be seeing you here both as a nostalgic wistfulness and as a sly promise. Steeped in the past, Playlist everywhere anticipates the future. Another motif is also a song title, 100 Years from Today, which is one of the great Carpe Diem songs, as the poet says. Like I'll Be Seeing You, it also features the moon, and today, 100 years from today, must make us imagine 2119. We won't see the moon shine then, the lyrics remind us. But with any luck, real music lovers, most of whom are Dodger fans, by the way, will see it shine, of course, thanks in part to David's witty, touching memorialization and guide to the old familiar faces and places. David.
Gee, that was just about the best introduction that I've ever had, and I'd like a copy of it. And I'm glad I signed that thing that said you can tape the event. So thank you very much for the introduction and for inviting me. And also, I would like to say that Stephen Yenser is probably the world's foremost authority on the great poet James Merrill. And I'd like to salute him for a lifetime of dedication to James Merrill's poetry and accomplishment, which is huge. Oh, look at that. She has the book, James Merrill, Essays and Criticism. But I did want to say that Stephen is as good a close reader of challenging poetry as there is in the country. So I'm glad to be able to salute him for that. And everything he said was true, without any exception. Also, I can proudly say that I've been to Dodger Stadium 5 times and to Ebbets Field in Brooklyn, and the Dodgers have won every game that I've attended. So they ought to fly me out here every year. With the last 3 games, we swept the Braves with a total of 25 runs and gave them only 7. So I'd say that was pretty good. Well, before reading from Playlist, I have a book coming out in the fall called 100 Autobiographies, a memoir. And the title was a gift from the poet Mark Strand. And I'd like to read one section just so you would get a feel for what this book will be like. It's an autobiography or a memoir. In my senior year of college, I was nervous about getting drafted and having to go to Vietnam. Morris Simon, father of Rochelle, the curly-haired brunette on whom I had a crush, was considered the wise man of the synagogue and it was to him that my father suggested I go for advice. Mr. Simon was the head of the temple's Chevra Kadisha, which undertook the community's funeral arrangements and cemetery maintenance. After I had my say, he made this cheerful little speech. "There's really nothing to worry about," he said. "You have to go to the army. Well, one of two things will happen. Either you'll be sent to Vietnam or you won't. If you're not, what's there to worry about? But let's say they send you to Vietnam. One of two things will happen. You'll get a cushy desk job in Saigon, or you'll go to the front. If you get the desk job, there's nothing to worry about. But even suppose they volunteer you into the 173rd Airborne Brigade, and God forbid they send you to the Mekong Delta as part of Operation Marauder, and there are 2 short artillery rounds, one of two things will happen. Either you'll get wounded in the blast, or you won't. If you won't, what's there to worry about? But even suppose you do get wounded, chas v'shalom, one of two things will happen. Either you'll recover, or you won't. If you recover, what's there to worry about? But even suppose you don't recover, one of two things will happen. You'll be buried in hallowed ground like a good Jewish boy, or you won't. If you're buried in hallowed ground, what's there to worry about? But suppose you're not buried in hallowed ground. Well, Mr. Simon paused. Well, then, my dear David, you're in one hell of a fix. So, playlist, I lived part of the time in Ithaca, New York, where Archie Ammons, A.R. Ammons, lived. He was a neighbor of mine. He's a great poet. And he lived around the corner from where my wife and I live. And I started writing this as in honor of him. He wrote a book called Tape for the Turn of the Year, with daily entries from December through January of, I think, 1964. So, 11/20/17. Dear Archie, today I drove past 606 Hanshaw Road, where you haven't lived since 1993, and where you had green shutters. The current occupants have maroon ones. Yours were better. You left us in February 2001, a week after you turned 75. I thought of your coil of tape for the turn of the year while I was driving and listening to the radio, and deciding I would write this poem to you, old friend, now that I'm the age you were when we edited a book together, and you were so much older then than I. If you were here, you would ask me, what about the radio enchants me so much? It's randomness, I would say. Someone else is choosing the order, the sequence, which may never cohere into sense, but the day is like that. It gives you what it has and lets you arrange it, and sometimes you luck into Sinatra singing The Song Is You, arranged by Billy May in 1958, and you understand that, Archie. You remember the phone call when I sang, "It seems to me I've heard that song before," and you sang back, "It's from an old familiar score." You knew all the words and reminded me that you didn't have a radio in your Toyota, which I can still see in your driveway, but you didn't need a radio because you had a very entertaining mind. 11/21/17, on Coleman Hawkins's birthday. It's November 21. Tomorrow, JFK will get assassinated. The late Hoagie Carmichael, born on the 22nd in 1899, will play Among My Souvenirs in the best years of our lives, and Matthew Zapruder will turn 50. But today I take my Audi out for a spin across various bridges spanning the gorges of Ithaca under a brilliant blue sky darkening as I drive and continuing to do so after I step out of the car and onto my favorite perch above Cayuga's waters, the porch where majestic trees devoid of leaves stand like scarecrows, the sky a deeper hue, an orange and blue blaze dipping below the horizon. The car radio is on Sirius 71, and my mind wanders. I think how brilliant the bridges are in Isn't This a Lovely Day, Irving Berlin, and Can't Help Lovin' That Man of Mine, Jerome Kern, who also wrote the music for The Way You Look Tonight. And that, The Way You Look Tonight, is playing on the kitchen radio right now with Coleman Hawkins on tenor sax, whose birthday is today, and tremendous sidemen, Max Roach, Milt Jackson, et al. So WKCR is doing all Hawkins all day, as they have done since the Johnson administration. Lyndon, not Andrew. And now I am nursing my Gibson with gin from a Chicago distillery, having made a sidecar for Stacy, and had a quiet moment with Dean Martin, Under the Bridges, and Keely Smith. Can't think of anything I'd rather do. 11/22/17. A good day for a drive to the country, underneath the apple tree with Carmen McRae, proving you can sing and talk at the same time, and hear the bluebird sing, she sings, as if there were a hyphen separating blue from birds, and we shoot up with summertime. 11/23/17. 72 hours have passed since my momentous decision to organize a poem around the symphonies and songs I hear on the radio on consecutive days as fall fades into the early darkness of winter, and I'm still up for a jazz version of Stravinsky while Harry Sweet's Edison isn't misbehaving. I just spent a dizzy night in Tunisia, and word reaches me that Jennifer Lawrence will play the lead in a soon-to-be-released female empowerment thriller in which she is a Soviet agent or double agent back in the day. 11/25/17. I'd be a beggar or a knave for you. Peggy Lee, why don't you do right? And why Lee Wiley? You'll find my reasoning is logically sound, and if that isn't love, it'll have to do back in your own backyard. Joe Stafford's impeccable tale for Embraceable You, and Helen Forrest, who sang All the Things You Are with Artie Shaw. Comes love, nothing can be done. No one could love you more than I, girl singers of the 1940s. But today I'm in the men's sauna with a poet from Nepal doing yoga, and the bonhomie of the men's locker room is what stays with me, and therefore I wish to salute Steve Lawrence, with or without Edie, and Mel Torme, Nat Cole, Joe Williams with the Basie Band, Johnny Hartman, my one and only love, the depth of that voice, matching Coltrane's tenor sax. 11/28/17. A man named Young wrote 100 Years from Today, one of the great Carpe Diem songs whose premise is youth is fleeting. Victor Young wrote the music, Ned Washington the lyrics. So let's play Jack Teagarden's Decca recording from 1941 with The Moon Above. It's yours and it's mine. Remember, darling, we won't see it shine 100 years from today. 11/29/17. I'm listening to Eric Dolphy without understanding a word. There are no words, but I know what you mean. On the drive back to Hamilton College, after visiting Archie for the first time in Goldwyn Smith Hall in 1976, I brought my hardcover copy of Diversifications. He signed it and took me to Epic headquarters. We took a walk around the Cornell Arts Quad. He showed me the one building on campus he liked. Was it Barnes Hall? Because it, quote, has some diversity to go with its unity, end quote. He complained of bad health, bad teeth, bad skin. Well, I said, you look good. Well, he said, I fuck a lot. 11:30:17. Hey, Archie, I thought of dialing your phone number today, 257-6181, to see if I can still make you laugh. Like the time I called the English department and asked for you. You weren't there, but Margaret took a message. I said, Archibald McLeish called for you. And sure enough, an hour and a half later, you returned my call. So today, I am phoning you to say I am going to write a poem you'll like called Empty Calories, a Memoir. 12:3:17. I'm skipping around. I'm skipping the best poem, so I've got to get the book. 12:3:17. When I listened to Ralph's New Blues, modern jazz quartet, the epiphany was the music that remained when the melody was removed, even for such as I who can't think of a better way to say our love is here to stay than the song. 12:4:17. Archie, you must guide me now. Be to me what Virgil was to Dante, what Rousseau was to Shelley. I made you laugh today. We were talking about Lolita, the movie, with Shelley Winters as the poor mother of the nymphette. And I said, if Shelley Winters comes, can spring be far behind? Archie, your guide was the wind. Mine is the voice of Cecile McLaurin Salvant. Nothing like you has ever been seen before. 12:5:17. I'm trying to catch up. It's hard. Blue Rondo a la Turk with Al Jarreau. My philosophy about the news is ignore the news, the way you avert your eyes from an ugly car crash or the stock market on a down day. 12:6:17. The greatest nickname in the history of jazz is Cannonball Adderley. The Jive Samba. Sam Jones with him in 1963, San Francisco, the Jazz Workshop. Ladies and gentlemen, here is the saxophonist you heard on Kind of Blue, brother of cornetist Nat, Cannonball, a corruption of cannibal because he could eat a horse. Mercy, mercy, mercy. 12:9:17. César Franck's Violin Sonata in A major, AKA the Franck Sinatra, we like. I'm glad we settled that. Now, if you play Robert Schumann's Piano Concerto in A minor, I guarantee you'll stop what you're doing and listening. And I find that whenever I'm talking with a serious musicologist and the talk turns to the Romantic period, and he or she says something profound and complicated, if I say, how about Schumann's Piano Concerto in A minor? My interlocutor will reply as if I've said something intelligent and make me feel like less of a fraud. 12:11:17, Mahler's Third. You can tell that the guy who wrote I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places was listening to the longsome last movement of Mahler's Third Symphony at the time, but in a less exalted, though equally schmaltzy mood. Just as you can be sure that Mahler had Nietzsche on the brain in the fourth movement when the alto asks the deep midnight to speak, and it does. It says the world's pain is deeper than daytime can guess, but pain passes and joy seeks eternity, as I do when I wave my baton. 12:12:17. Somewhere, some summer, a few decades ago, Mahler's First Symphony, the Titan, is playing, and melodies familiar from his songs are turning up with so much Sturm und Drang. No wonder Lenny loved conducting him. Frere Jacques as a funeral march in D minor, dazzling, a double bass solo no less. And as for the agitated end, Mahler storms the heavens with an apotheosis of D major, but only after staring at the abyss and having a good long cry. 12:13, 17. Before I passed out, Ella Fitzgerald sang, "It's all right with me. Don't you want to forget someone too? I do. But I am Baudelaire walking among the homeless, and I burn to paint the woman who visits me in my hotel room and makes a quick exit like an apparition or something the previous occupant left behind with her nightgown. I burn for her black sun and drunk-making moon." To burn is to yearn, a rhyme as natural in the 19th century as gloomy and to me are in the minds of Johnny Mercer and Leo Robin. And you did say you wanted Harold Arlen to take a bow with Blues in the Night, or with Ella singing "It's Only a Paper Moon" in the context of the Great Depression, a critique of make-believe that exemplifies what it criticizes at Honky Tonk U in Penny Lane, PA. 12:14, 17. Joe Williams has my full attention. Speaking of bad luck and trouble, it isn't every day you have the blues with the Count Basie band backing you up in the big city where to live is to love is to lose. Change achieved one letter at a time on Malcolm X Boulevard. Ira Gershwin's lyric for "But Not For Me," genius. But it's 8 o'clock and time for The Manchurian Candidate. 12:15, 17. You asked me to explain Janet Leigh's character in The Manchurian Candidate and what motivates her to come on to Major Marco while he is having a cigarette and a nervous breakdown on the train from DC to NY. Perhaps she works for the FBI or CIA, like Eva Marie Saint in North by Northwest, but the scenes were left on the cutting room floor. Or maybe she represents the plight of an attractive woman in pre-feminist days when the best she can hope for is to be a nurse or auxiliary to the chain-smoking male hero. On the other hand, she wears a pearl necklace when she gives Sinatra her phone number, Eldorado 59970, as if she were a model in a John O'Hara novel. I conclude she needs no further justification for being there than the fact that she's Janet Leigh. 12:16, 17. As one who has written on Hitchcock's America, I keep waiting for a magazine editor to ask me to write Hitchcock's Blondes. Who was the most beautiful of all? Stacy says Grace Kelly, and I guess I agree, though Ingrid Bergman is either a spy or a psychoanalyst, is to the 1940s what Grace, as a model or a Riviera princess, is to the 1950s. And from the point of view of sheer sexuality, I don't see how anyone can outdo Kim Novak in Vertigo. For the sophisticated spy, you can't beat Eva Marie Saint in North by Northwest. And for the heroines of Psycho and The Birds, who could outshine Janet Leigh and Tippi Hedren, who, Tippi, is also well cast as the kleptomaniac in Marnie, who gets to say, "You Freud, me Jane," and "Oh men, you say no thanks to one of them, and bingo, you're a candidate for the funny farm." 12:17. I live in Hitchcock's America. What does that mean? It means the ride always ends in an amusement park, and a girl and her uncle can have the same first name. Cary Grant is suave, Jimmy Stewart has a broken leg or a bruised psyche, Doris Day's voice fills the house, even the Jews and the blacks are white, even the brunettes are blonde. I confess I'm at the end of my rope, spellbound by the notorious master of suspicion. Maybe Janet shouldn't have taken that dough or had that tryst. Joel McCrae tells America that all Europe's lights are out, and Priscilla Lane recites Emma Lazarus's lines atop the Statue of Liberty. 12:19. Why didn't Schubert finish his 8th Symphony, the Unfinished? Or more exactly, why did he write a 9th Symphony, the Great, before finishing the 8th, the greater. The classical DJ thinks maybe Schubert got bored with the piece. Not bloody likely. You could counter that he didn't think he could write a third and fourth movement as good as the first two, so the better part of valor was to quit while he was ahead. It is, of course, possible to argue that it is perfect as is, whether planned or not, the immortal melody in the allegro meeting its match in the clashing sonatinas of the second movement. 1220. Sublime as Schubert's string quintet in C major, his last and greatest chamber work. Now, what makes it greater than, say, the piano quintet known as the Trout, or any of his string quartets? Maybe because he wrote it with a taste of death in his mouth in September 1828 and collapsed weeks later, weakened by syphilis and the toxic medications he took for it, dying on November 19. The string quintet has an extra cello replacing the customary second viola. Maybe that has something to do with it. But when you get to the fourth movement, Allegretto, there's no doubt about it. The music has scored a victory. 1221-17. La chute de Rennes is a great French phrase for the curve at the base of a lady's back. Archie would have approved. After lunch, we'd head to Mayer's smoke shop, and I'd read Barron's while he ambled over to Penthouse. After he found a dime and I 3 pennies on the corner of Tioga and Buffalo, where the old post office used to be, and later that day I wrote a poem for John Ashbery. Let's have it, he said. Okay, I said, here goes. And John said he liked it, particularly the third line. The poem was 2 lines long. 12/22/17. Second shortest day of the year slips into memory with snow on the branches of tall maples giving them the look of birches, the ground covered with Irving Berlin's White Dream, virginal except for the footsteps between me and the mailbox, the sky divided between the blue clouds and the gray like the uniforms in a bowl game on television with the sound turned off so I can listen to Billie Holiday sing Nice Work If You Can Get It, or maybe to something rougher like Mingus's Tonight at Noon, where all hell's about to break out, an idiom Ashbery favored. I'd like to write an homage to J.A. that begins, I had tried every pillow out there and none of them worked. But first the orange ball dips out of sight. 12:24. Vladimir Horowitz is playing Sousa's Stars and Stripes Forever, and the piano sounds like all the instruments in a marching band without ever ceasing to be a piano, most majestic of instruments. And didn't Balanchine choreograph a ballet to the same music? A triumph of legs, hot dogs, and the 4th of July. But the nice thing about turning your room into a radio is that you can then turn around and play Beethoven's Fifth and relish the moment when the third movement turns into the fourth. So a lot of this is really insightful about the music. You know, it's not. I mean, really, you should listen to some of these pieces with what I write because. Anyway, 12:26:17. 1 o'clock jump with Count Basie. Now that'll grab your attention, and when it's over, you change stations and you get the saxophone and piano solos in Charlie Parker out of nowhere. But there are days you have to mute the sound and listen to the dialogue in The Godfather. My theory is that lines spoken to Tom Hagen have a special importance throughout. I don't like violence, Tom. I'm a businessman. Blood is a big expense. I don't feel I have to wipe everybody out, Tom, just my enemies. Tom, this is business, and this man is taking it very, very personal. Can you get me off the hook, Tom, for old time's sake? 1227, on Marlene Dietrich's 116th birthday, she wears a top hat for me and sings with a lovely lisp. She knows what she wants. Einen Mann, einen richtigen Mann. Christmas music on most stations, but Wynton Marsalis on mine. Can't get started with you. One of Ira's finest lyrics, with music by Vladimir Dukelski, alias Vernon Duke, on the jazz station. And then comes Chet Baker, owner of the youngest voice of all time, an old man singing Imagination, a young man's song. Not much of a lyric, but a lovely tune. 122817, My Struggle. Some of these have subtitles, like this one, My Struggle. Denmark's a prison. Substitute marriage. This was when one was 26 or 28, and one yearned to go to prison, which was located in Copenhagen, not far from the Tivoli Gardens, which you must visit if you go to Copenhagen. One even committed crimes solely for the purpose of getting caught and sentenced to prison there. The time in solitary would be the time it took to write a book as crazy as Mein Kampf. The time would go as slowly as time on a hot September afternoon when one has vowed to fast until sundown. Now I gotta check my watch. Since I didn't check it before I started the reading, that's a completely gratuitous gesture, but you're saying. 123017. March on, but first let's dance a ballet blanc with Chopin's Les Sylphides on a Nuit Blanche, the ballerina in white, the shape of a bell, the dress down to her calves. You do feel like cheering, but tell me, what does this have to do with Stravinsky's Soldier's Tale Suite, which follows, sounding Russian to my ears, as Mozart's Piano Concerto No. 27 in B-flat sounds Viennese. Now, why is that? I don't know. But that's what I am thinking when the strings take over, the woodwinds interrupt like birds on spring mornings, and the mood is lively with a fantastic script. Now, if I could only put it into words. 123117. I can't wait for 5 o'clock to listen to Duke Ellington, Cocktails for Two. And maybe it makes a difference, maybe not, but I'm going to use the high-priced vermouth with the small batch gin and a pearl onion, stir with mucho hielo, and serve with 1 ice cube. Now I'm in the mood for Broadway with Mel Torme, where the joy of living holds sway, and a great underrated song like Memories of You for Sinatra in 1957, or for Art Tatum on solo piano, or for Benjamin David Goodman on clarinet, in conversation with Fletcher Henderson at the piano and Lionel Hampton on the vibraphone. Now I want to hear it sung, so Rosemary Clooney follows Benny's clarinet in 1956. I can't believe how many names I drop in these poems. 1118. Happy New Year. As I was saying, Artie Shaw disbands his troupe, goes to Mexico, comes back with Frenzy. I play that and follow with Amapola, the background music as Heart-Sore Noodles pursues Deborah in Once Upon a Time in America, and Perfidia, the background music in the scene where the petty Yugoslav bureaucrat gets blackmailed for state secrets in The Mask of Demetrius, with Zachary Scott as Demetrius, perfect for the part. And the fourth of my one-word foreign titles is Volare, with Dean Martin sliding into an evening in Roma, always lifts my spirits, and then Sinatra, 1954, Lee Wiley, 1934, June Hutton, 1961, Maxine Sullivan when she was 75, and Sarah Vaughan take turns singing from beyond the boundary, 100 years from today. 1218. Brahms expected his close friends to leap to their feet and say bravo, but their misgivings woke his own, and there were only 3 weeks to go, so he had no choice but to forge ahead with his fourth in E minor, opus 98, a restless allegro beginning with 2 notes in a falling third. For the whole of that movement, I felt as if I was getting beaten up by two very intelligent people. Brief melancholy. The winds are lovely. The guide says tragic pathos. And maybe Jan Swofford is right, who says minor key dramas usually move from darkness to light and fatality to triumph by turning to the major mode by the end. But here the culmination is resolutely minor. Still, I'm with the guy who hears the ring of defiance. 1-3-18. Step lightly with Bobby Hutcherson vibes, 14 minutes, 19 seconds. Then the 1963 recording of the same song by Blue Mitchell, trumpet, with Joe Henderson and Herbie Hancock. You don't have to choose. That's the beauty of it. I learned this one evening when we had guests, and I put on a disc consisting exclusively of versions of All of Me. Sinatra, Billie Holiday, Ruth Etting, Mildred Bailey, Harry James, Count Basie, Benny Goodman, Louis Armstrong, Teddy Wilson, Dinah Washington, others too. And the volume was low, and no one was listening until a break in the conversation, and Nick Christopher, who said, "Hey, this is great music," won the prize. 1-4-18. Doris Before Day is a great screen name because of Oscar Levant's witticism. He knew Doris Day before she was a virgin. But mostly because of the voice of Doris at break of day or when driving on Route 17 and listening to her sing Sentimental Journey with Les Brown and his band of renown, and Dream a Little Dream of Me, or Someone Like You, 100 years from today, or Love Me or Leave Me, the face cherubic, the flip side of Sinatra's brooding and young at heart, blonde and relentlessly upbeat, but there is sex in that voice. 1-5-18, Mozart's 25th Symphony, written when he was 17, known as the Little G Minor Symphony, to distinguish it from his 40th Symphony, the Great G Minor Symphony, and the height of Western civilization, is moving the traffic nicely on Route 13, where yesterday's snow has been swept, but you get to see it on the trees and the hills. 1-7-18. Evening summer breeze, warbling of a meadowlark. My mother was born today. If I lighted a candle for her last evening. My new favorite word is if. If is the foundation of all fantasy and much poetry, which is an homage to the subjunctive mood, as Robert Musil wrote. And didn't Woody Allen quote, "What is this thing called love?" Sinatra seems intent on proving he could hold a note longer than you'd have thought possible in April in Paris, reprise. Today he is touring the cities, the states, beginning with Vermont, then Paris, London by night, Brazil. Stacy calls from the kitchen, "John Hamm is on WNYC. Let Dorothy Fields be your teacher, and don't blame me," or Sidney Bechet with Muskrat Ramble, which Country Joe and the Fish turned into an anti-war song. 1-8. There are two things all investors need to know. Don't sell your winners, and it's always a good time to take some money off the table. Now, how you implement these contradictory adages is anyone's guess, but this I know. Jazz is the music of the stock market as it zigs and zags, from Dearly Beloved, Sonny Rollins, to September Song, Gary Burton, Blue Rondo a la Turk, Chris Brubeck, Sermonette, Lambert, Hendricks, and Ross, and Honeysuckle Rose, Ella Fitzgerald, all on my playlist for today. A Facebook friend asks if I have one piece of advice, and only one, to give a young writer, what would it be? And I say, play Count Basie, April in Paris, and write. 1-10-18. Thanks to Nat King Cole, there's an orange-colored sky, and the Dow is now in positive territory, erasing earlier losses. The two most boring words in the language are Russia investigation. Rod Stewart trying to sing Gershwin is even sadder than Sinatra wasting his voice on Winchester Cathedral. And if Ravel wrote a pavane for the Princess of Monaco, he wasn't thinking of Grace Kelly, but I can. 111:18, fake news. On the bad news station, they're doing interactive multiple choice questions such as, the difference between $50 and $100 is 1, a lot, 2, an insignificant sum, 3, 50%, or 4, the difference between $50 and $100. Then the host introduces a guest who will, on the basis of your answer, tell you how you will vote in the next election. 112:18. Someday my prince will come, and Miles Davis is his name. The more I see you, the more I hear Johnny Hartman in the next apartment. I sat on a bar stool next to Stephanie Paterick. We sang Good Morning, and the girl one stool over joined in, and we agreed. There are 3 reasons to watch There's No Business Like Show Business, and those 3 reasons are the 3 songs Marilyn sings, not to mention how she seduces the lyrics of Bye Bye Baby and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and the pathos she finds in Gus Kahn's lyric for I'm Through with Love in Some Like It Hot. The last 2 are 114:18 and then 115:18. 114. I began thinking that listing the titles would be poetry enough. And now it is 30 degrees and rising in Ithaca with the dazzle of sunlight like diamond spangles in the snow, the sky, blue and cumulus, clouds drift slowly south. Tonight, son, Joe, and I will watch the 7 Samurai. Until then, I must work on my foreword with Bill Evans round midnight backing me up while the sun shines right through the shades so I can't even see the type on the screen. On the 40 station, Francis Langford, Serenade in Blue, with its amazing mood-shifting bridge, but you remained in my heart. 115:18. The agenda for today is Nureyev dancing to Nat Cole singing Nature Boy, and I, happy to be alive, sad to bring this poem to an end, propose a toast to Archie. And what did we accomplish along the way? Did we communicate? Did we say anything new, or something old in a new way, or something borrowed, something blue? The color of the sky today, despite the 0 at the bone temperature, the music was great, from Ithaca to New York City, with you beside me. Thank you. Thank you very much. It is usually customary at this point for the poet to acknowledge the applause and gracefully make his way off the stage. But if you think I'm going to leave here that quickly, you're mistaken, because I want to stand here for a second or two and look out at this wonderful audience and compliment you on your excellent taste, acumen, your attentiveness. I could tell you were with me the whole time. I enjoyed it so much I want to extend it further like a piece of prose, as if I were writing a poem right now and wanting to include each person by name, or if not, by the way they look at me, the way you look tonight. I think that does it.
It's like sitting in a storm of multicolored confetti. You know, the 20th century's been chewed up and it's falling down on you in the form of names. Wonderful. You left out Slam Stewart. You had Slam Stewart. Yeah, well, or maybe it would. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. The book, maybe more than one, are for sale at the back, and David will be glad to sign them up here. So thank you very much for coming out tonight. Come back in a week. Nick Laird will be here. Thank you.